Hello and welcome. Elektra Assassin is an 8-issue series written by Frank Miller and illustrated by Bill Sienkiewicz. It was published in 1986 by the defunct Epic Comics imprint owned by Marvel Comics. Both Miller and Sienkiewicz are legendary creators with extensive resumes. In 1986, they were at a career high point, which allowed them some degree of creative freedom. Miller had the success of Daredevil and The Dark Knight Returns. Sienkiewicz had transformed from a Neil Adams clone into a highly versatile artist. His run on New Mutants was radical and controversial for its departure from traditional comic book art. And, as if in contrast, his numerous painted covers were lush, eye-catching pieces that were stylish, but more conventional. While working on Elektra, they were also working on the graphic novel Daredevil, Love and War. According to Sienkiewicz, Elektra was a monthly book that paid the bills while they put together the Daredevil piece. In comparison, Love and War is good in its own right, but Elektra Assassin is something entirely different. It's violent, sexy, outrageous, and the product of two creators having nothing but fun. If they were intentionally pushing boundaries, it's not obvious. That would be an accidental byproduct of them exploding with creativity and inspiring one another. Miller provided a full script for every issue. Sienkiewicz worked from that script, doing the completed artwork and adding his own unique style. Those pages were then sent to Miller, who would rewrite his script to match the crazy visuals Sienkiewicz provided. It was the perfect blend of a writer and an artist working in total unison. Elektra Assassin is pretty straightforward, but the narrative is fractured and shifts around. It gives off a manic type of energy, which can be difficult to follow at times. So let's dig into the series and put it all into perspective. This issue is entirely about Elektra's origin and how she wound up in a dirty asylum. It's a recap of all the events that brought her to this place. Her memories are chronological, but they're broken into pieces and then inserted into what's happening in the present. This is Elektra struggling to put herself back together. These memories are personified by the white globes she sees and the one black globe she avoids. It begins with her birth and an attempted assassination of her father. This attempt kills her pregnant mother, who gives birth to Elektra as she dies. So she's born into blood. She begins in tragedy. Not coincidentally, Elektra's parents are named Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, but their real names are actually forgotten by Elektra. All three names are characters from a classic tragedy. It's a tragedy that's been reinterpreted many times, with different elements, but the basic story is Elektra seeking justice for the death of her father. The false memory sequence, with the implication that Elektra's father abused her, is Miller acknowledging and disabusing anyone of the notion that this character has any relation to the psychological condition called the Elektra complex. This is the female equivalent of the more well-known Oedipus complex. Again, this is a false memory. There is no parental abuse. During this memory trip, we see Elektra in the present being, air quotes, treated by the staff. She is unresponsive and barely functional. One of the attendants assaults Elektra, which kicks in her instinct. After killing her abuser, the black globe opens and reveals the dark memories of her past. We learn she was recruited and trained by a ninja organization, the Hand. It's here she first encounters the Beast, who infects her with milk. This turns her into a perfect killing machine and a favored representative of the Beast. Since the Beast looks male, I'm not going anywhere near an interpretation of the milk. You can work that out on your own. Finally, the story shifts to Elektra's most recent assignment. On principle, she takes a job to eliminate a corrupt dictator. After the job is complete, she attends the funeral, where she smells the presence of the Beast within the American ambassador, Reich. That evening, she goes to the American embassy to confront Reich. It's learned that he's not the Beast, but he is thoroughly infected with milk. Elektra is wounded and forced to drink too much milk, which shatters her mind. Elektra was later discovered wandering on a beach, where she was captured and then placed within the asylum. Elektra has now finished piecing herself together, and she escapes. This issue is split into two separate time frames. There is the past, as remembered by the agent, Garrett, and there is the present, with Elektra inside a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility accessing Garrett's memories. Elektra learns about the investigation Garrett and his partner, the psychopath Perry, conducted to learn who assassinated the dictator. That led them to Elektra, who subsequently destroyed them. The issue ends with Elektra making a stand in the S.H.I.E.L.D. facility as agents prepare to subdue her. What's not revealed until much later is that Garrett and Perry are two former criminals who have undergone experimental cybernetic enhancements. These implants record every thought they have. Those thoughts are later uploaded, recorded, and examined. This ensures they're doing their job and not resorting to their former criminal activities. They may utilize their criminal skills and lack of morals, but they're in service to S.H.I.E.L.D., so that's okay, I guess. It needs to be mentioned that Garrett was originally intended to die. However, after seeing the artwork, Miller liked what Sienkiewicz had done with Garrett, so the script was changed, and Garrett was moved up to have a co-starring role with Elektra. Elektra has been captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. She's wired into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s computer system as they attempt to retrieve her memories. They also examine her physically and note the effects the milk had on her brain. S.H.I.E.L.D. gives her an antitoxin to clear up the residual amounts of milk in her system. Meanwhile, Garrett is interrogated so S.H.I.E.L.D. can learn more about Elektra. We are introduced to Ken Wind, a presidential hopeful. Wind has a very JFK appearance. He's somewhat youthful, with a silly plastered-on grin. For the record, Wind's appearance is a photocopy of the conservative politician Dan Quayle. Although it was rumored this was Sienkiewicz himself, it is not. Sienkiewicz has said many times it's actually Quayle. Disgusted by Elektra's murderous capability, and in denial of his attraction to her, Garrett confronts Elektra. Suddenly, Garrett blacks out and becomes an unwilling, mind-controlled participant in Elektra's escape. Now free, Elektra attends an embassy affair to assassinate Reich, which she easily accomplishes. However, at the same time, she discovers that Ken Wind has been infected by the Beast. She must now follow Wind to America and destroy the presidential candidate. Garrett reports to Nick Fury, who isn't impressed with what he hears. The scene is only worth noting for the absurd portrayal of Fury, who's testing an outrageously large weapon. It's pretty safe to say it's going for a big dick energy vibe. We learn that Garrett maintains a mental connection to Elektra. When Garrett goes to warn Ken Wind that he's in danger, Elektra allows Garrett to see what she's planning. Elektra finds a comatose girl and assumes her identity. Using this appearance, Elektra can get close to Wind and end his life. Unfortunately, Wind, who is completely infected with milk, can read Garrett's mind, and he's prepared for Elektra's attack. Of all the issues, this one is the hardest to follow. It's not exactly clear if Elektra has taken over this woman, Sandy, or whether she's changed into Sandy. It seems like Elektra has borrowed Sandy's personality as a cover, which then transforms Elektra's actual appearance. So Elektra looks and acts like Sandy, but Elektra is actually in control. It's magical ninja stuff. Except, Sandy is a stronger personality than expected, and she begins daydreaming of a wild romance between herself and a co-worker. That strong need to be in love, get married, and have babies overrides Elektra's control, and she gets dangerously close to becoming Sandy. Then the real Sandy dies, which gives Elektra the opportunity to kill the Sandy she's mentally become. It's a convoluted mess, and more than a little confusing. Anyway, the assassination attempt fails, but Elektra returns to herself in time to save Garrett. Despite this issue being insane, and at times difficult to follow, this is where Miller and Sienkiewicz lean into making the series a surreal fever dream. From the opening with Fury to the romantic daydreams of Sandy, it's an untethered mix of creative action. And somehow, they're getting away with it. Issue 5 introduces my favorite S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Chastity McBride. Again, as if seeing who could make her the most outrageous, Miller introduces her as someone proudly reporting to Fury with a discipline status report, which she seems very intent on delivering. Sienkiewicz backlights her with a beam of light coming down from the heavens. An oversized cross dangles at a perfect angle from her right ear. Her entire presence screams Catholic values. Of course, her name implies she is pure and virginal, like a nun who is metaphorically married to Christ. The entire issue is just one big fight scene, with S.H.I.E.L.D. attempting to capture Elektra. In order to give himself a plausible cover story, Garrett has to shoot Elektra and take her into custody. But this is more mind control tricks. Elektra switches places with a comatose McBride, and once Garrett is repaired by S.H.I.E.L.D., they escape again. The issue opens with an image Miller will repeat in Sin City: a naked woman on a heart-shaped bed. The woman in question is Elektra, and she's being watched over by Garrett. As the title suggests, the issue reveals what's at stake. Ken Wind is on track to become the president. Despite that, he attempts to corrupt a general with milk and begin Armageddon. At the last moment, the general takes his own life, and the world is spared. However, we now know what will happen if Wind is elected. The world will burn. S.H.I.E.L.D. discovers that Garrett and his former partner, Perry, are both psychotic ex-convicts with an extensive criminal past. Knowing this, Nick Fury moves to shut down the X-Tech-Op facility. However, Perry has been repaired, and with the help of Chuck, a little demonic being, he escapes capture. Chastity McBride attempts to capture Perry, but the operation is a complete failure. Only McBride survives. Perry is then escorted to the Beast, where he is given milk. Here's where Chastity goes off the rails. Not only does she ask Fury to be disciplined, in a manner that seems to imply she looks forward to it, but then she wears a habit for the remainder of the series. It's just ridiculous. Elektra goes to the election headquarters of Ken Wind and retrieves milk. She tastes it to make a connection to the Beast. This is for Garrett's benefit, as he sees that Elektra isn't some crazed assassin. She's actually trying to stop the end of the world. Also, to up the ante, the actual president, who's represented as a bad photocopy of Richard Nixon, which may be a subtle allusion to then-President Ronald Reagan, continually threatens to push the red button and launch a nuclear strike. So regardless of the outcome, the world is basically screwed. The issue ends at a rally, where Elektra prepares to take out her target. Amusingly, Sienkiewicz sneaks in an Alan Moore tribute, possibly as a nod to the fact that both Watchmen and Elektra are predicated on a nuclear war. Or maybe the two were discussing working together on the project that would become the abandoned Big Numbers. I'm not sure, but it's a tribute nonetheless. The story jumps forward 4 months. It opens with McBride dictating a report to the president, Ken Wind. Elektra and Garrett are in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, and both are unresponsive. So it looks like the assassination failed again, the world is in peril, and the only two people who know about the danger are comatose. To raise the stakes further, there are protests outside the White House concerning the president provoking the Russians into a nuclear war. It is a very bleak scenario. McBride continues her report, relating the events of the attempted assassination. It is utter chaos as Elektra and Garrett battle the Beast, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and Ninja, while pursuing Wind as he's escorted to safety in a golden egg. An egg being a proper choice, since Wind smells like spoiled mayonnaise, and one of the main ingredients in mayonnaise is eggs. This is where the psychopath Perry enters the fight. Not only does he prevent Garrett from killing Wind, but he utterly dismantles him. McBride unleashes an assault on the Beast, which causes him to retreat. Presumably, Miller is going for a connection to the biblical beast from Revelations, so it's only appropriate that religiously devoted McBride defeats the monster and survives the encounter. Then there is Elektra. She takes down Perry and assumes control of the scene. Wind is unresponsive, no longer able to act on his own without the beast's presence. An mortally injured Garrett pleads with Elektra to end him, but Elektra has a different plan. Using her mind control ninja magic, she swaps Wind's mind with Garrett's, and then puts her own mind into one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. little people on the scene. Garrett and Elektra wait 4 months for S.H.I.E.L.D. to investigate the matter thoroughly and ensure that no one caught on to what they pulled off. While it's not seen, Elektra returns to her own body and escapes. The series ends with Garrett as the president in the White House. While it looked like he was ready to push a red button and end the world, it was just posturing to get the Russians to sign a treaty. Likely a treaty to disarm and prevent a nuclear exchange between them at some point. So the world will be saved. However, the person in charge of one of the most powerful nations is a former criminal with an extensive record. So what happens in the future is rather open to interpretation. Let's just say, Miller ends on a slight commentary about what kind of person it takes to sit in the White House. Who knows? It's vague enough to consider it both a happy and a scary ending. It's not surprising that preventing nuclear Armageddon is a major part of Elektra. In the late 80s, that was a pervasive theme in all media. It appeared in movies, on TV, and in music. If you were alive during that time, you probably remember living with the constant eventuality that a mushroom cloud epilogue could happen at any time for any number of reasons. Miller and Sienkiewicz take all that pressurized negativity and go to extreme lengths to explore it. Because, to a rational person, self-extinction in a fire we've unleashed is outrageous. In that context, there was nothing that Miller or Sienkiewicz could do that was more audacious than the reality of the paranoid social climate. Therefore, they went for it, and they captured it with a clear Polaroid snapshot of the existential absurdity of the era. That said, it would be misguided to graft a strictly grim interpretation onto Elektra, because the energy Miller and Sienkiewicz project isn't spiteful or angry. There's a playful alchemy between them that can neither be replicated nor explained, which adds to its uniqueness. What makes Elektra a great comic is it's something that can only exist as a comic. If it was translated into a movie or an animated feature, it's going to lose elements that make it work. You have to visually change so much of it that it becomes a pale version of the original. Its choppy internal dialogue would sound like bad word salad if spoken out loud. The action scenes would be excessive. The abstract imagery, the changing color scheme, and the different visual styles would be too much of a contrast. All of these elements would look ridiculous in another medium, but within comics, they work together. And, in the end, Elektra is an example of how well they can work together when applied properly. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and all that engagement stuff. If you have the means, please support this channel on Patreon. Thanks to all my current supporters on Patreon and YouTube. This has been a rough year, and your ongoing support and kindness have smoothed over a lot of rough edges. I sincerely cannot thank you enough. Extra special thanks to Eidolon, Constant Disappointment Records, Jeff Nicholson, Sicken, Francis De La Cruz, Michael DeFonte, John Nyukes, Andrew Barton, Odin Ashcroft, Ruby St. Dennis, Phil Sagan, Edward Clayton Andrews, Corey Drew, Ellis Greger, Brian Deaton, Tom Granis, John Gaunt, James Graham, and Matt Marino. You are all justified and ancient.